You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your host, Kristin, and with me today are the boys. Mark, good morning, my love. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Kristin? So nice to see you again this week.
You as well. I'm good. I had a lovely time reliving our episode from last week, so I gave that a nice little listen at work, and it was good. It was good. We like to talk about
we had
movies.
fun. Yes, we do.
And Christos, you're returning from your Riri travels up north a little.
Back from the Delta Quadrant. I feel like I've been all over, but I've been to at least 4 or 5 different states since my last episode on. So it's very good to be home, actually.
Isn't that the funny part of traveling, is it makes you appreciate being home so much more sometimes?
Yeah. Totally. I spent my whole Saturday doing laundry, unpacking, cleaning house, and just unpacking STLV and just putting my whole life kind of like back together, and it felt great.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, we're so happy to have you back. And Kelvin, the traveler as well. How was Amsterdam?
It was lovely. Thank you for the All Good World shout out as well last week. That was cool. I've been saying to everyone, I felt so dismissive that I'd never been to Amsterdam before now. 43 years old, and it's a 45-minute flight. It is so close. And I've always dismissed it because I don't smoke weed, and it's like legalized over there. So I was like, nah, I don't want to go. And how terrible that is when it's such a beautiful, beautiful city. Oh, yeah. And Pride was great. It was all on the water on lots of different boats and very, very pretty.
Oh, amazing.
I'll be back.
Kelvin, that's like saying I'm not coming to California because weed is legal.
Well, no, but do you know, like when people say, I don't want to go to Vegas because I don't like gambling? And it's like, there's so much more to do.
There's so much more, yes.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So apologies to Amsterdam. It's a beautiful city. I enjoyed myself very much.
I remember when Justin and I went, oh my goodness, close to 10 or over 10 years ago now. Ooh. And everybody thought that's why we were going. They thought our whole purpose was that we were going to just get high for a week, when we were going there to see a concert. So, and it's funny, it was a metal concert, and we were expecting the whole Ziggo Dome to just be completely hotboxed. Not even a little bit. Because I think people, it's not it's not a crutch for them, or they don't see it as big of a deal because it's just everywhere. So I always have found that to be a very funny little anecdote, that I went to a metal concert in Amsterdam and didn't leave high. Well, should we all kind of go into our one of my favorite segments, of course, which is Great Joy and Gratitude.
Great joy and gratitude.
So, Christos, you have a lot to be thankful for and be grateful for, with getting to see so many wonderful people this week, both from within our crew and some Trek royalty. Tell me, my great joy and gratitude is wanting to hear all about your time at STLV.
And that will be my great joy and gratitude. It was an amazing STLV as far as they go. I felt like this was honestly, it's like the first year that it really, truly felt to be like it was before the pandemic. It's just been kind of slowly getting back there, between the con moving to Bali's and face masks being mandatory at one point. And last year was the strike, and people couldn't even talk about Star Trek. So this year is the first year since 2019 that it really felt like the regular con. I kind of just said that out loud for the first time, and it makes sense, I guess. But it was a big one. That there was a lot of star power there. There's a lot of love for Star Trek. Of course, my favorite part is just seeing all of my friends and all the Star Trek crew and hanging out with everybody. I got this, I hadn't seen Christian Carter in a year and a half face to face. So it was because of us, me not going on things, him not going to things. So it was great to catch up with him. He was my roomie for the week. So that was great. We had a lot of morning talking time, having our coffee and just really catching up. Of course, my birthday was while I was there. So everyone took me to a really nice dinner at Crossroads, and it was just great to be surrounded by the Trek love. Of course, like the Rio is in the process of being remodeled, and I was fortunate to get one of the remodeled rooms, so it no longer felt like a dump and was really nice. And the old buffet has been torn down. It's been replaced by this really nice food court with lots of different options, and it's slowly getting there. I think by next year, it's going to be, probably 100% remodeled, and it'll be really nice. So that was good. Star Power, there was there's no lacking of it. I mean, everybody was there, and then some. Some of my highlight was probably not even a Star Trek moment, but was getting to meet Mary McDonnell from Battlestar Galactica, President Roslin. She was so gracious. We had like a 5-minute conversation talking about strong women in sci-fi. And I thought she was just so good. And we're talking about it's like, oh yeah, I get to tell her how much, her character and Kate Mulgrews and Gates McFadden. And she's like, those are all my friends. I'm like, you guys should make something together. And it's like, that's our new Star Trek spinoff is going to be these women.
I love
but,
that.
I feel like I'm rambling, but I got to meet Tarina and Tara Rosling. Oh, she was so nice and so gracious. A lot of firsts for me in those terms. A couple of celebrities that I'd never been to the cons before, but were there. Got to talk to Tawny Newsome a bit. Finally got a good picture with Kate Mulgrew. I mean, I got a great picture with Gates and Marina and all the love. My funny story, and then I'm going to pass this on, was I posted a picture of me and Gates McFadden on Instagram and tagged STLV. And that picture started randomly coming on in the main stage. Like it would, like the screen behind the actors and all in that big hall where they have them hanging, the TVs hanging down, it would just go to that. And at one point, the TNG cast was on stage, and it just was a picture of me and Gates, and it said #What's the TBEV? So I was like, so people were going around, oh, you're that guy that keeps popping up on the screen. I'm like, yeah.
Guilty. Did you put forward the idea of having those three ladies on What's the TBEV?
I guess I'm a little shy about that. I feel like everybody must ask them to be on their cons or on their podcasts and things like that. I feel like I need better listenership before I would even propose that. Really cool thing, though, I did get to talk to Aaron Watke and one of the Henkelman brothers at length at some time, and we did talk about that a little bit. So maybe.
There we go.
Yeah.
And Kelvin, what's your great joy and gratitude today?
Oh God, I can't follow that. Really, but I am being very, very merchandise basic. And Christos, do you remember I was saying I really wanted the San Diego Comic-Con Hallmark Enterprise B Nexus Damage? Well, yeah, I just got it off eBay, it came yesterday. And yeah, I've now got one of every Enterprise for the Christmas tree. Woo! So it's now sat on the mantelpiece, and it'll be sat there until the Christmas tree goes up, which will probably be on like the 1st of November. When the seasonal affective disorder kicks in.
I wasn't even able to get one for me because I wasn't even thinking about it. Actually, I've been traveling around so much, but it's a good point. Maybe I'll hop on eBay before they get too crazy in price.
The prices are quite good at the moment. So get it now and it'll increase in value. Convention exclusive.
Yeah.
Go. And Mark, how about yourself?
We've had a lot of rain in Boston for the last week, but it cleared up by the weekend. And so yesterday I was able to get out, go to the beach, spend a few hours there with my dog. We played some Frisbee. and I'm really grateful to live so close to the water. Like, I love it. It was really nice, really peaceful. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, moving from great joy and gratitude to an unfortunate loss with our Star Trek family this week, where Patty Yasutake, who played Nurse Alyssa Ogawa, passed away at age 70 after a long life well lived. She passed away from a battle with a rare form of T-cell lymphoma. So very sad to have seen that. She was credited in 16 episodes throughout TNG, as well as both the movies Generations and First Contact. I was so shocked when I was looking this up. I didn't realize she had been credited in 16 episodes.
Actually feel like that wasn't a lot. I feel like, because I think was introduced in season 4.
Yeah.
I feel like she was just always there. And so I felt 16 was a low number.
Oh,
yeah.
But
I'm interestingly, one of my friends here in Manchester, shout out to Robin, he just throws me little trivia questions in the morning via text to wake up my brain. Okay. And we were playing how many episodes did people guest star in? And he went for Guinan. And then one of them was Keiko O'Brien. So how many Deep Space Nine episodes do we think Keiko was in? And do you think it's more or less than Nurse Ogawa in Next Gen?
I think it's like 39 or something like that, right?
So we have...
Or am I thinking of Nog?
13.
I might be thinking of Nog.
What was the number you just said for Nurse Ogawa?
16.
Oh, I thought it was just a bit lower. That was the surprise statistic. But actually, no, it's only 19. So Keiko was in 19 DS9, meaning... and you would assume she was in so many more.
Yeah.
But just showing the power of Nurse Ogawa as a background character, she was in nearly as many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes Nurse Ogawa didn't even have a line, and then sometimes she had a lot of lines, like in like Lower Decks, obviously.
What struck me is that our beloved sickbay on the Enterprise D is getting quieter and quieter, because didn't the guy who plays Martinez, the other non-speaking extra, didn't he pass away very recently as well?
You're
so
correct.
Both of Beverly Crusher's nurses have now passed, which is really sad.
Dr. Solar better watch out.
I think my favorite Nurse Ogawa moment has to be just the subtle little acting in Genesis when Beverly had just been attacked and they're all leaving the meeting, and she just, as she walks away, she kind of like puts her fists on the table and just walks away sort of hunched over, just giving that little nod that she too is starting to de-evolve. And I just thought that was a brilliant acting move. So, it's so sad to see the people that we grew up with, that we know, that we love, and life is starting to take its course. But, also admiring the fact that she has left such an impact on an icon such as Star Trek. So.
Yeah, my favorite Nurse Ogawa episodes probably in Suspicions, when she shows her loyalty to Beverly by helping her.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
That's the too bad you're not my boss anymore line, isn't it? It's so cool.
Yeah.
On my Stardate rewatch, I'm on 2370, and Genesis is my next episode, Kristin. So I'm going to be watching that scene a little later today.
Hey.
I love that episode. I know it can be, some people love it or really just hate it. I always thought that it was a fun episode. Yeah. Is it biologically accurate? Probably not. But that doesn't stop me from loving it. So how about you, Mark? What's one of your favorite Nurse Ogawa moments?
Oh, Jesus. I feel like, what you guys had mentioned already about her feeling as though she was part from the beginning. When I think about TNG, there's certain characters like Nurse Ogawa or like Barclay, where even though maybe they weren't seen on screen, you feel like they were always part of that crew.
She's up there with Rowe and O'Brien and, Barkley, like you said. There's just...
When she's on screen, she eats it up.
She does. Yeah.
She's incredible. So I look forward to seeing her whenever she pops on. I'm like, oh, it's an Ogawa episode,
And Patty had the most beautiful smile.
Didn't she, though?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't she? So.
Oh my God! When she lost her baby, oh my God, I was crushed.
Yeah.
Crushed, because you would have been feeling for the character, and then to go through that trauma, like it wasn't shown on screen, but you're just like, gut wrenched.
Well, and doesn't her baby save the day in Genesis? Like,
Sure
yeah. So that was kind of a backhanded thing, but I think they wanted to show impact and all good things on what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So today's topic, Kelvin, do you want to introduce us? What are we talking about today?
Today, we are continuing our evolution of a species with part 3, the Ferengi. So we've previously covered Andorians and the Q continuum.
Yes, indeed. And I have to say, it was so difficult developing what we were going to talk about today and how to sum up the history and evolution of the Ferengi that would fit into a 1-hour show. I don't think it's any secret. I love the Ferengi. They hold a special place in my heart. They are a nuanced and deeply rich species, and they've been greatly underestimated by the fandom. They've just been seen as a joke and a comic relief throughout the run of Trek. But in fact, I think they've had one of the most substantial societal revolutions of almost any other species on Trek. And the fact they were constantly underestimated could almost be a point of strength and a smart tactic if it was done purposefully. So for today, though, I did choose to narrow our concentration just to their development and what happened in DS9 with a review of some key players and events with the transformation of Ferenginar.
I am really looking forward to this conversation, Kristin, because I am not the biggest fan of the Ferengi.
Okay.
And I am one of those people who find them a little bit one-note, monoculture, greedy, and nothing else.
All right.
So I'm hoping I come away from today with a new perspective.
I am excited to see if I can sway you. I actually pulled out some of my old political theory books to sort of influence the discussion today. So
Kristin really did her homework.
I did.
I would say I'm right there in Kelvin's corner here, so I'm ready for this conversation because I'm more of a not my favorite. I will say though, I don't think of any of these evolution talks that we've had so far and how we're going to have, will we ever take on a species that changed so much from its inception on the show to what it became.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really cool.
Yes. And I love this quote by Ira Stephen Bear that he had about Ferengis. And he said, "To me, the Ferengi, even more than O'Brien, are the closest to 20th century human beings on the show. They're us. They have the energy of the 20th century human being. They have drive. They have greed. They have the sense of self that we do. You can't trust them until you can trust them. And once you understand them, they're quite wonderful. And like us, they're constantly rising above their limitations. And what more can you ask of anyone?" And I just thought that perfectly summed up, like you said, Christos, about the move from where they first started to what they tried next to what finally landed sort of as a storyline in DS9. I love that. So the first topic that we're going to talk about with the Ferengi are their history and their biology. So just sort of talking about their history within the development in the Star Trek show. So not actually the history of Ferengi. We don't have enough time for that. They go back millennia. So, Christos, do you want to give us a few little blurbs about the history of the Ferengi development?
Well, sure thing. And let me just grab the first couple here. So first off, Gene Roddenberry created the idea of the Ferengi with Herbert Wright. So we guess this is another thing we can throw back to Gene Roddenberry. Although I think what we ended up with the Ferengi, Gene died kind of around early season 5 of TNG. So he would not live to see what would become of the Ferengi.
No.
But we wouldn't have gotten started without Gene. So once again, we owe, we know the great bird of the galaxy a little something there. The overall idea of the Ferengi was Gene's, as I said, but he tapped Wright to develop the species itself, resulting in Wright penning the first 2 episodes to feature the Ferengi, both The Last Outpost and The Battle, both season 1 episodes. And Wright has been dubbed the father of the Ferengi.
What a cool title to have, where you are the father or mother or parentage of such an impactful part of Trek. So I would, oh my goodness, I'd love that.
The Moogie.
Yeah.
The Moogie of the Ferengi. Yes, I love that.
Wouldn't it be more the Grand Nagus?
I'm now thinking, what's the father version of Moogie? Is it like Foogie?
Oh my God.
I don't know if that's ever been talked about, but maybe we can make it Foogie, because I kind of love that. Christos is holding up his copy of The Rules of Acquisition, which I too have that book. And I got mine signed by Armin on the cruise earlier this year.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
That's one of my special, yes.
This is actually vintage. I should take better care of it. I didn't realize this was from 1995. This is an original.
Yeah, mine too. And my coworker gave it to me because she was moving, and she's like, "It's Star Trek. Do you want it?" Yes, absolutely. I'm waiting for someone to do that with me with A Stitch in Time and be like, "Do you want this? It's just an old book." I will take that off your hands.
Yeah, and put it straight on eBay.
No, I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
so valuable.
I
It
know,
is so valuable.
I think it's worth more to me as a possession.
Yes.
I can always make
isn't the Rules of Acquisition just kind of like the art of the deal, but for Star Trek?
Yeah. I mean, look at me. I'm embracing my Ferengi. You're getting a free book off a colleague, and opportunity plus instinct equals profit.
Let's make Ferengi great again.
Okay. You know what? As a cat lady, I take offense to any reference to that man and his party.
He is orange. Okay, I'm done.
Little orange greedy one.
He is. Oh, is Trump a real life Ferengi? No, they deserve better. They deserve better, as will come apparent.
They deserve better.
As we talk.
Well, he's not got the lobes for it. He's had one shot off.
No.
All right.
All right. We are off the rails.
Good done.
We are spiraling, and I'm loving every moment of it. One of the things that I found funny was the Ferengi were meant to be reintroduced to be the new antagonists for the Federation, because they were now at peace with the Klingons.
Right.
So Wright did look at what would be the best way of doing this. So in the 60s, it was mimicking the Cold War and the two sides of that, and making the Klingons on one side and the Federation on the other. With the Ferengi, he was looking around Hollywood and seeing the constant greed and cutthroat ethos of agents and lawyers. And so the Ferengi were developed to represent that aspect of the human condition, which was in complete contrast to the Federation's rejection of money. So, that was the goal. Whether or not that was reached, we'll talk about it. But we do look a little bit at the reception of the Ferengi in a bit here, but it was I thought it was a clever way of having some social commentary with the introduction of a new foe.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at it from that financial perspective of the Federation has got no money and everyone's really happy the Ferengi are traditional like us and greedy and wealth. And when you stand them alone, it's really interesting. But when you get to DS9 and the two cultures merge, you then get Federation people supposedly having money to pay for things in quarks. And I think it's even been done on lower decks. It's like, we don't even have money, so we don't need these things. I'll just replicate it. So I think that concept got a little bit messy once we got to DS9.
It did, but I also really enjoyed the culture clash that we saw on DS9, especially in the early seasons where they were trying to sort of live and let live. You do what you want, we'll do what we want as long as we're not treading on one another. Well, except the Ferengi would tread on you if they saw the profit in it. But it was very interesting. Everything from watching Nog not being able to go to school through to how are they going to convince Quark that it was worth his financial interest to stay on DS9. There was a lot happening in that.
Yeah. Can I just take this next point because this has got me all over it. So we're calling this the codpiece conjecture. So there was a debate between Wright and Roddenberry about the sex fetish of the Ferengi, with Gene wanting them all well endowed with huge cod pieces and went into details about their potential sex positions. Wright reminded him that this is a family show airing at prime time. Gene's a right old perv, isn't it? I love it.
I mean, Deanna almost had three boobs. Like I said, there's always the graphic or the novelization of the motion picture. I mean, we've got a little bit of peek into this guy's head a few times. I mean, these little kinks.
But wouldn't Gene love it? Because, we didn't get the codpiece conjecture, but Ferengi are probably the most sexualized species on, with the whole Umox joke coming around constantly. I was nearly sick when we were covering Little Green Men at the concept of Nog receiving Umox right in front of his dad. It's all there. It's all there, and it all came from that little bit with Gene.
It did. And I always found it interesting too, because Gene wanted this well endowment and huge codpiece, but they were always going to be shorter stature people. So just to put an idea, could you imagine Armin Shimmerman with a gigantic codpiece fighting the bridge crew? I mean, the comedy.
Where's that? Oh my.
Oh.
I got you.
Oh my.
There we go.
Oh,
and I just felt like it would have been this even a more absurd looking species if they just were kind of, not proportioned in that respect. But
I'm going to choose to think it's there, but very well concealed now. And, I'm understanding Lita in a whole new light.
There we go. Oh, when I was doing research, there's a picture on Wikipedia, and it's very clearly cosplayers as Rom and Lita. And the caption underneath just says, Ferengi cosplay with a miscellaneous Bajoran woman. I was like, stop. Like, nothing about this was random. That was a very obviously specific cosplay that was done very well because the lady looked exactly like Lita. It was actually quite impressive. Ferengi comes from the Persian word Ferengi, which means Frank, and it was the word used to refer to the European traders who first made contact with Parisians, and it eventually became to mean the word foreigner.
I love that.
I love etymology. So I thought it was really cool to see where the word came from. Because, where do they come up with all these titles and names and everything? So, yeah.
I'm having a Persian meal for dinner tonight. So spooky.
Ooh, I'm jealous. I love Persian food. It's so good. Mark, do you want to give us some biological characteristics of the Ferengi?
If I can get some umox first, then maybe I will.
Not with them headphones on.
Ooh.
Wow.
Anyway, so a lot of time and effort was put into developing the Ferengi. They were envisioned as being short with grotesque faces. I don't know. The way they ended up, I don't think they were grotesque. You know, it's kind of like mice, you know, with the ears, mice ears, and the, you know, the little nose or the big nose. Sorry, I don't know. They're kind of cute. I don't think they're ugly. I think there's been uglier aliens for sure in TNG than the Ferengi.
It's true. It's true. Oh, you know what I always regret though is we never got to see a baby Ferengi. Because why am I picturing them as being super cute little orange whatnots with gigantic ears? I don't know. I just see them as being
it would probably be paramount to child abuse to putting a baby through all those prosthetics and makeup to make it happen. So
maybe we could do it with CGI now.
Yeah,
probably.
They did that CGI Klingon baby in Discovery.
Yeah.
Was the Borg baby on Voyager CGI, or was that an actual baby?
That was the baby. They glued shit to its head.
I think they did that too in, was it Best of Both Worlds? Or no, it might have been.
Q-Who, yeah.
Yeah, where they just pull the drawer and there's all the, I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to do that.
Why you just mentioned that, I must give a shout out. There was this cosplayer at Destination Trek the other week, and she had her baby on a harness. He was like toddling around, so maybe, 18 months, 2 years, dressed as a Borg, and it was Borg baby, getting all the attention. But the mother was pregnant, and she had a sign maturation chamber on her. It was great.
Oh. Good
That's
people
so
raising
cute.
their babies right. I tell you, that's how we dig ourselves out of a hole. And of course, the biggest physical characteristic that we all know of the Ferengis are their big ears. And the intention was always going to be that they were to have better than average hearing, which I love that we do see that reflected several times throughout Trek, where noises happen and the screech and the recoiling of the Ferengi does occur.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question about that. I don't know if this is going to come up or not, but we're talking about Little Green Men, that episode in particular. And is it their universal translators are inside of their head? It's like an implant because they're like hitting their heads. That was never sort of explained. I don't really understand it. Kelvin, do you understand it at all?
Well, you're right in that it was never explained, and it was never really made clear over whether it is an implant or whether it's a natural function of the Ferengi brain, almost. And they were kind of like it's probably an implant if they were putting tweezers in their ear and trying to turn it on, turn it off, with a bit of percussive maintenance. But yeah, I think it was a cool development. And again, it's the whole business negotiation advantage of having good hearing to be able to pick up on a deal. So, yeah.
And they were always going to be developed as having a 4-lobed brain, which meant that they were going to be impervious to mind reading.
Yeah.
So that was, again, always the goal, is to have that as a defense against, betazoids and whatnot, again, for business deals. If you got to hold your cards tight, right? So if you can have your mind read, well, that sort of, the whole point is lost then. I love that they were described as hairless humanoids with protruding cupped ears and dressed in strange clothing. Their accent is arrogant, their eyes beady, and their fingernails blue.
Very random. Blue fingernails.
Very random. Blue fingernails. Sure. Because if we get blue fingernails, we go to the hospital.
Right? Girl, you got sepsis.
Yeah. How's your blood oxygen level? It doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. No. And then Andrew Probert worked with Michael Westmore to refine the final product that we know today. Some of the drafts included these really long chins, which they've got some early drafts online that you can see, and it was actually quite disturbing. I'm glad they didn't stick with it. And then the other one were these big Vulcan bat-like ears that they eventually just said, what if we just bring them around to the forehead?
I think I've seen a sketch of that. It's reminding me of something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I didn't like the early drafts.
I feel like being influenced by that more when they went ahead and was working on Discovery. So when they did the Discovery Ferengi, I think they were more influenced by the original art than what was done in the 90s, because it is very reminiscent of that.
And we're always going to see that, right? That reimagining of species from series to series.
It's such an important point, Mark, that you bring up the Discovery Ferengi if we're talking about the biology, because do you remember the stink that it caused in just the trailers for the new season of Discovery when we saw that Federation Council member Ferengi, or if they were even Federation, I think they were. And everyone was kicking off. It was like the Klingons all over again. But that's just because the Ferengi had such this strong aesthetic that hasn't really changed a huge amount from the last outpost to, well, Voyager, basically, or Enterprise, should we say. So, kudos for them remaining unchanged for so long and not needing to be altered.
Yeah.
But when we did go back to Picard and we see them in Picard, they look more reminiscent of the 90s Ferengi when you're talking season 3. Yeah.
Right. And that was probably more the Terry Metalis influence there of, trying to dial things back a little bit and get it to 90s Trek.
If you want to make things tickled. New. Tickled on your ears? If you want to, change things, that's fine, but there still has to be some sort of a callback to the tradition that people know for that familiarity. We're humans. We like that. We like to be able to recognize certain things. So speaking of evolution, though, Ferengi teeth apparently became a TNG pastime of Westmore, where he took it upon himself to constantly be evolving the look of the dentures for each individual actor playing a Ferengi. And so some of them had a lot of spaces, some of them had a lot of crossovers, some had the dual lines of teeth. It was his passion, almost sounds like, to really play up these grotesque dentures, and there are no two sets that are alike.
I always think of Rom's teeth because he had this snaggle tooth.
He had a lot happening in his mouth. That was not good. How did that not get how did he put a shirt on? Did he roll his lips over his teeth, or because I would be worried about getting your shirt stuck on that sucker every time you get dressed.
Maybe they went.
Everything gets zipped from behind.
Oh, touche.
Honestly, I think that is how they handled the costuming.
I think he could beam in and out of his clothes. Just press a button and it beams onto him.
You know what? He's a very, very talented engineer. That's very much potential for him. Christos, do you want to walk us through some of the initial reception of the Ferengi?
Oh, I'll walk us through, because a lot happened in the first 5 years, right? So despite the attempt to make them the frightening antagonist, it completely backfired as disastrous per Ira Steven Behr and Armin Shimmerman. And basically they were relegated as being lame and only used in season 1 in those first 2 episodes. They were not, they were not threatening at all. Hey, maybe they did need that cod piece or something. I don't know, to make it more interesting. But Michael Piller joined the show in season 3. And I think all of us remember that the show did start changing greatly for the better in season 3. And with Michael Piller kind of coming on as showrunner, and he decided to bring him back in The Price. As you call, I think that was the one where maybe we're negotiating over the wormhole. Is that the one? Basically not bringing him back as threatening adversaries, but weasels and vermin, and basically kind of really introducing the first signs we see of that business element of the Ferengi, I think. And and by season 5, I think we saw them again later that season with Menage a Troy, right? They were a little mean and menacing in that episode for sure. But also we start to see some of the comical side, the Umoks and all that stuff coming in. But by season 5, the Ferengi were far more established, and basically it was crucial, and which basically they became more crucial as it was announced that there would be a main character on DS9 that would be Ferengi.
Mm-hmm. The Ferengi were also the species that took over the Enterprise and Rascals, which I want to shout out, like, what a good idea it was for, like, the least threatening, most goofy looking of the TNG aliens to be on essentially the kids episode. So I think that it was a good pairing because in spite of the fact they took over the Enterprise, the danger seemed less menacing because, I mean, look at them. It was the Ferengi.
It is, but then the question I have will always be, was that their strategy is to be seen as non-threatening and to be seen as just this comical character because that allows them to get one over on their competition. You know, if you don't seem threatening, people aren't going to try to defend against you. So, you know, was that just all their plan all along, and them really being quite smart and devious with how they represented themselves?
Oh, I don't think they're that smart.
No. I would just say their role in Rascals, that's like the second half of that episode. I think we've recently covered that episode.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'll say it again, it is very unbelievable how easily they take the Enterprise, and we'll just
they take out Worf.
Yeah, and Data.
And yeah, like, what is happening? So I don't know. It kind of just leads me to the whole, I have a theory. I think one of my favorite Ferengi moments is on the Price, where they first show up to the negotiations and the one guy really wants his chair. And he keeps asking, he's like, okay, I'd like my chair now, please. And Worf comes in and he's like, could you get your, Klingon servant to get me a chair? And he's like, I am the chief of security. And she's like, well, then who gets the chairs? I don't know why. It was so simple, but just the delivery of that line cracks me up every time I see it. So we've had some very notable appearances by actors and recurring as different Ferengi. And I just love it because there are certain actors who just fit the bill for what a Ferengi needs to look like. So, of course, the first one, Mr. Armin Shimmerman. So, of course, he's played Quark, Braktor on Peak Performance, Latek on The Last Outpost, and Indrag as Lumba on Prophet and Lace. And I think we all agree that Armin Shimmerman truly is just a gold addition to the Star Trek family.
He's basically the king of the Ferengi, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's the godfather of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I read that he really hated the initial performance in The Last Outpost so much that he felt it was his duty to come back and rewrite the characters of the Ferengi to make up for how rubbish it was to start with.
Which is really funny because the reason they asked him to come back was because they loved how he portrayed Ferengi in the first couple of episodes. So,
wow.
Yeah, just shows that how you critique yourself is not necessarily how others are critiquing you. Christos, do you want to take us through Mr. Max?
Yeah, Mr. Max Grodin. Of course, he's Mr. Rom, but he did play some other Ferengi. Sylvak in Captain's Holiday, Par Lenore, I hope I said that right, and Perfect Mate, which is a season 5 TNG episode, and Gint in Body Parts, and probably the second most infamous, famous actor to play Ferengi.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting with Rom, just how much of a rewrite that character got in DS9. If you think of season 1 Rom, he nearly killed Quark a couple of times.
Yeah.
He was evil. He was really bad.
Oh, yeah.
And then he became comedy in season 2. I think it's in Necessary Evil, the where he's opening the safe really quickly. And Quark's like, oh my God, don't you ever go near anything again.
Yeah,
that's when he really turned a corner and became comedy Rom that we all know and love.
There goes Kelvin showing off that DS9 season 2 trivia.
Well, in fairness, I am rewatching it at the moment, Christos. It was I'm not just bringing up the awkward appearance on another show.
Oh, I was.
And then we, of course, have a few famous names that were Ferengi, but they were just one Ferengi, which means they had a lot of time to delve into the characters. So Wallace Shawn as the Grand Nagus Zek. Inconceivable. Oh.
I remember clocking. I was young, obviously. I was like 13 or 14 when DS9 premiered. But I remember, or maybe I was a little older. I don't know. But I just remember, even through his makeup, knowing who that was.
Yeah. The voice.
Yes.
He's got such an identifiable voice that and he's throughout so many things in the 90s that if you watch Clueless, thank you. I didn't know how many of our listeners would be like, yes, let's go Clueless. But no, he was Cher gives him her coffee.
I don't know the actor of being other characters than the Grand Nagus. And it was the one other role I remember him from, which is post DS9, was when he was in an episode of Sex and the City. And I was like, it's the Grand Nagus.
That's the episode where the girl falls out the window.
It is. Splat.
I'm so bored I could die. And then she did. Mark, do you want to take us through Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's now, a ship named after him in Discovery. We're going to talk about Nog, of course, because of him being the first Ferengi to enlist in Starfleet. So talk about quite a role as far as character growth. I would say, Deep Space Nine did a really good job with developing characters, because you got like Miles O'Brien, who started off on TNG as just the guy that stood in the transporter room. We've all seen the memes, right? And now we have, of course, Nog, who started, the first episode of Deep Space Nine, starting off like a little hoodlum, and he's going with Jake and getting him in trouble. And of course, Captain Sisko does not want his son really to hang out with him because he's getting in all this trouble. And we go from that just being like a hoodlum punk kid that, is causing problems around the station, to all of a sudden he is just learning more about himself in the course of those first few seasons, learning what he is actually about and what he wants to do with his life. I think more so than other Ferengi children, because a lot of Ferengi children aren't around, a lot of humans or a lot of, Klingons or a lot of, these other species. And so he takes it upon himself to want to enlist into Starfleet, and he ends up getting endorsed by Captain Sisko, going and becoming an ensign, and then a war hero during the war. So there's been such a huge arc for this character, and credit to Aaron Eisenberg, because he was just supposed to be like a one-off here and there, but he brought so much to the table with every performance that they brought him back and back and back and gave him more to do. So when you talk about important Ferengi, yes, Quark is one of those important Ferengi, but you also have to talk about Aaron Eisenberg. You have to talk about Nog.
Absolutely agreed.
Can I just point out as well that Deep Space Nine tried so hard to do the anti-Wesley Crusher with Jake, no interest in being in Starfleet, and then suddenly realized, well, what are we going to do? So almost it was a bit of a failed concept with Jake, and actually with Nog, we want people's journey to Starfleet because we're all fans of Starfleet watching the show. So what do you do with someone who's no interest in Star Trek being on Star Trek as a character? And by the end of Deep Space Nine, Nog was in a lot more episodes than Jake.
His character development was much more interesting than Jake's,
well,
I found.
True. And when you had the Federation at war, there really was no place for Jake.
No.
I mean, I'm a reporter, but, that only goes so far. Just ask J.D. Vance.
Well, if we can get him off the couch.
And away from dolphins.
Oh, my. I'll take the next one because...
Yes, please do.
Jeffrey Combs as Brunt FCA is like one of my favorite Ferengi. Brunt FCA. Is it Ferengi Commerce Association, right? Yeah, something like that. But he's just so by the book. He's he's very much a Ferengi. He's got his job. He's the liquidator, I believe. And he's just always stirring shit. I mean, that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I was just watching the magnificent Ferengi today, and he's even there, just there, causing problems. And I love the way my favorite performance of Brunt is at the very end of DS9 when Quark thinks he's about to become the Grand Nagus, and Brunt FCA comes back, and he's kissing Quark's ass right down to like doing his toenails and all that stuff. And then it turns out that Rom's going to be the Grand Nagus, and he just like completely flips the script, and whatever he was doing for Quark, he's now doing for Rom. And I'm like, that I just love Brunt.
Absolutely, I do as well.
And while we're on Jeffrey, before we move on, don't forget he was also Krem, the Ferengi, in Acquisition on Enterprise.
Yes, he was.
So actually, if you think Armin, Max, and Jeffrey have all played multiple Ferengis.
There we go.
Is it Ferengis or just Ferengi?
I just think Ferengi.
Plural.
I just have it as the same.
Yeah, plural. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next one I wanted to bring up was Hamilton Camp was the actor who played Lek. And Lek isn't maybe the most well-known Ferengi, but he was hired by Quark to go and rescue Mugi when she was abducted by the Dominion. So he did play a big part in that. And also he was a professional eliminator, but unlike most Ferengi, he was more interested in honing his combat skills than in earning profit. I wanted to include him because he starts to show that there are Ferengi who are interested in other pursuits other than profit. They're there. And it was interesting to see how they got peppered in throughout the run, showing that there is diversity within the species.
And Dr. Rhaegar from Suspicions.
Dr. Rhaegar, yes, of course, Suspicions. That I always felt really, really bad for him, where he didn't get to see his invention. I know, that's always the sad one. Who wants to take Ishka?
I know I just did one, but I'm going to take it because Ishka, i.e. Mugi, was played by two actresses, actually. The first would be Cicely Adams, and the second would be Andrea Martin. And I don't know how many of you realize that Andrea Martin is Aunt Vula in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And that is one of my favorite characters of all time, is Aunt Vula. In fact, I had a thought that maybe I should do a drag persona called Thuvlaki and base her off of Aunt Vula. So the fact that Ishka is Aunt Vula is perfect.
And then last but certainly not least, we have Helena Udi, who played Pell, who was one of the first female Ferengi we saw on screen play a substantial role. And we are actually going to talk about her coming up quite a little bit in depth. So when I was sort of mentioning how are we going to look at the Ferengi's development, I really wanted to look at the arc over DS9 and their move in their societal revolution. So looking back a little bit at Ferenginar, their culture was centralized around the idea of profit and, of course, adhering to the rules of acquisition. Their economic system grew out of a simple bartering to eventually become one of the most notable in interstellar commerce. However, misogyny and patriarchy meant the exclusion of women from being able to pursue profit. That eliminated, and this is a specific number I found, 53.3% of the population from being able to contribute to the GDP. So in Ferengi, 53.3% of the population were women. Keeping women at home, naked, and not allowing our political views or opinions seems to actually be very apropos to some of the discussions happening in politics today, where a lot of people are looking to try to get back to that sort of makeup, but that was very much how the planet ran.
Can I just point out, so this is one of, this concept of the Ferengi woman and the treatment of is one of the biggest issues I take with the Ferengi, not because of the treatment, well, because of the treatment of women, that's bad, but it's almost like they dug themselves a hole. So this random line in The Last Outpost that they say to Tasha Yar, you work with your women and force them to wear clothing, sickening, which they took a creative choice to carry through to Deep Space Nine, which is great, but it just doesn't make sense. And I'm glad you mentioned about like GDP, and from an economic culture, to have half of your population not working, not paying tax, not earning profit, it just, well, on its own, that's bad business. So it didn't work.
I think I have an explanation. So first off, you're absolutely right in everything you said, because you're thinking very logically. You're thinking as somebody who's free thinking and inclusive. But keeping in mind, this was supposed to be 1987, 1988 when these were being created. I think the allegory was very Middle Eastern, and how the Middle Eastern view their women and how they still view a lot of their women. Look at, if you ever want to say, make America great again, allegory, look at what happened in Afghanistan, right? And in the 70s, women were an integral part of society. They could wear regular clothes, blah, blah, blah. They went backwards, and now they're, they have no place in society. It's home naked and not allowing political views or opinions, covered, or in this case, uncovered. But that was the allegory they were trying to bring in there. And the Ferengi were supposed to be a flawed society mirroring 80s capitalistic, I don't want to say United States, but probably United States. So I think that's where that comes from. So the idea that changes throughout DS9 when Ishka and Zek start to, date, and she basically starts changing the Ferengi law from the inside. Yeah. That's that revolution happening there, and then women gaining rights.
Yes. And that's what really that's really my favorite storyline, is looking at that, because when we look back at nomadic civilizations, everybody was fairly equal in terms of what they did for their community. And it was really when industrialization started happening that women were just relegated to the home, as they were the ones to care for the children. So when we look at sort of how this idea that women's places in the home has been so woven into the fabric of our society for eons, right? I loved seeing the evolution of a species come out of that thought and start to see things differently. And, even so much so that within the Ferengi, I think it almost shows that I don't know if hatred is the right word, but definitely that level of exclusion was even more powerful than their desire for Latinum. And I think that says a lot too about how much they came along in the 7 seasons of DS9, that they came from that that tight place where, not only could women not earn profit, they'd be punished if they did. They had to relegate property if they were a widow or a divorcee. There's a lot happening there that had to be undone, and we see that happen. So I really want to dive into a few of the major players. And at being a revolution and being a major upheaval of society, I have given them all titles. So I will start with the first one because she's one of my favorite. And I call her Pel the Shrouded. So she disguised both her lobes and her breasts to appear as a man to partake in important business deals. She was paramount in the first ever business dealing between the Alpha and the Gamma Quadrant. Without her input, many do doubt that a final contract would have been signed, making it the most significant financial achievement of a Ferengi female to that point.
So basically, she's gentle.
Yes. Or I was going to say George Eliot, or, you know, how a lot of women had to, you know, have pseudonyms when they wrote because you couldn't have any sort of.
Or Victoria.
You could also argue that she discovered the Dominion because it was the first ever mention of the Dominion in Deep Space Nine was in that episode. And that was the game to get the Docide to admit and point the Ferengi towards them.
So she was such a powerful female figure. And I think seeing her come in and starting to figure out her ways to supersede the rules in which she had been born, I think really starts to show those seeds of discontentment that were existing. And to think of over half of a planet now, how many of them had the same sort of inclinations bubbling up inside them?
I have one of my favorite Dax moments from the Rules of Acquisition episode when Dax is talking to Pel and Pel reveals that they're in love with Quark. That was a reveal before I'm a female. And Jadzia was just fine. She was like, you love him, don't you? You love him, thinking it was a man on man. And then the next conversation was, well, I'm female. And that was the shock. So I just love that little very gay acceptance moment from Jadzia when we really didn't get that lot in Trek back then. It was noticed. I will take Ishka, the revolutionary. So her theory was the right to wear clothing. And this would give women pockets. What would they put in these pockets? Latinum. So they would need to get jobs to get Latinum, and after getting it, they would want to spend it. And this would double the number of people working, spending, and the overall contribution to the planet's commerce. All right, okay, thank you. That's what I'm answering my own doubts here. So by dating one Grand Nagus and being the mother to the incumbent Nagus, her influence would be felt far and wide. Yeah.
She was
love it.
a powerful force. She was something to be reckoned with. And I love the episode where she does get punished and she's got to pay back the money, and she pays back a substantial amount. And then it is revealed that that's only a tiny little bit of what she actually had. And I was like, work queen, you go. So I have always loved Ishka. And knowing how to work the system, knowing how to, you know, always have the ear of whoever is in charge is a big way to sort of start to get ripples of change going.
Yeah, manipulation isn't always a bad thing.
It is not. It is not, especially when that person, those who you are manipulating, are keeping you under their boots.
Sure. Let's talk about Zek the Relentless. He gave women the right to wear clothing, whereby he was immediately exiled to DS9 and superseded by Brunt FCA. While on DS9, Zek set up a makeshift government where he continued his work to convince Ferengi businessmen of the importance of moving towards the integration of women and into the economic system there. So, Zek was quite the revolutionary as well, whether by the influence of Ishka and just by being the one that got it done. So kudos to Zek.
Yes. And I love that he was dethroned, he was exiled, but that did not stop his work. He did not relent. He kept moving towards this goal that he saw. And eventually, of course, we all know that he was successful in getting his place back through the help of Quark, who we'll talk about next. But I just love that. Okay, well, everything's changed. I'm not exactly in the same space of power that I was, but that's not going to stop me going for my goal. And I really enjoyed that. Mark, you want to take the next one?
The next one is Lunda, the clandestine. So Quark undergoes procedures to appear female to influence the founder of the Slug O'Cola. Is it Niva? Niva, of the importance of this movement. His influence led to the reinstatement of Zek. So yeah, if you can remember that particular episode, is it?
Do we have to?
Niva's the other Ferengi, right? And sort of falls for Quark, dressed as Lumba. And makes Quark really uncomfortable because he's never been hit on by another man before. So it's hijinks ensue. I don't know. It's funny. Makes me laugh.
I do love, though, that this shows that drag can save the world one scene at a time. So
Quark.
Quark, work.
I don't think this is the best episode to show trans representation in Star Trek.
No, drag representation, maybe.
Drag I will get, but trans, no. And it's not aged particularly well. Not on my
most of the creators don't look back fondly at this episode and have regrets.
But I will say, though, that Quark did make a very substantial, not sacrifice, but he very much went outside of his comfort zone for the greater good. Because if he had not done this, who knows if Zek would have achieved his place back as Nagus, and from that point, who knows what would have happened if Brent had stayed in power. So we do have to give some credit to the willingness to be uncomfortable that Quark as Lumba did, and the fact that it was all working for, again, the cause. And this reminds me a lot of times of some of the women who would seduce like Nazis during the World War, and they would take them out. And you know, so you gotta sometimes just work your feminine wiles to get to get your way. And I don't know. It hasn't aged well in certain respects, absolutely, but in terms of its importance to the storyline, I do have to kind of give it that credit.
It's that the end just justifies the means kind of argument.
I guess. I mean, does the end justify?
Your little story about the seduction thing kind of reminds me of Chain of Command, where Beverly's all over the Ferengi to try to get the transport to where they need to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'd be
I think it's such
critical.
a fantastic gender argument, this, of are women manipulative or are men stupid? You know, I find this subject of women getting what they want, and that term, feminine wiles, I find it fascinating.
I know.
Through the study of gender.
Yes. And having somebody in my life once tell me to learn how to use my feminine wiles, I've had that used to me. And I'm going, well, I'm more than that. Thank you. But I can't say that I haven't, you know, I winked and maybe flirted my way out of a couple speeding tickets. So, you know, sometimes you just got to work the system. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is Rom the Transformational. So he found a perfect balance between keeping certain traditions of Ferengi commerce alive, but supported the move of women to become equal. And this can be seen in Lower Decks. And this is why I love Lower Decks, is it allows us to have these little callbacks to the Trek from the 90s. So so when Lita and Rom are on the Cerritos in Lower Decks, we can still see that they're quite driven by their Latinum. What did they sell them? Or what did they try to sell them? Was it a scarf or some sort of piece of clothing or whatever? And they were giving them the marked up price. And it was, you could still see that there, but it was now in this place of a woman by his side. And by 2381, clothed females can be seen in public. And going back, the Sluggo Cola commercial shows women choosing men who drink the cola over those who don't. And this lends to the idea that now female Ferengi have more active agency in choosing their mates. And then
Brilliant.
by 2383, the first female Damon can be seen in Prodigy.
What a
Very
journey.
cool.
What a
What a
journey.
journey.
And do you know what? Just the little bits in Lower Decks and Prodigy to finish that off or just continue where DS9 ended has really moved it forward so much.
It has.
If anything, it's just a little signal that things continued, right? Not regressed. They didn't fall backwards on the progress.
Yeah, which I love to see. So really what we saw was that the Ferengi were able to keep their democratic capitalism roots. So they kept that in place, but they achieved a Marxist-like change in society's superstructures through the changes we saw in their law, morality, politics, fashion, and entertainment. And this occurred through a complete shift in its economic substructures, which are the means and modes of production. So I don't want people adding me that I'm a commie or whatever. No, what I'm saying is from a political theory perspective, Marx saw that the entirety of society's superstructure, so like I said, the law, religion, all of that, were directly influenced by how the society makes and manages its economy. And as changes happen in the economy, those in it undoubtedly will affect the superstructures. And we see that happen here, where we have a brand new addition of a workforce into the means and modes of production, and we see that shift occur. So I just found it really funny how this random little species created by Gene Roddenberry in the 80s perfectly mimics a political theory put forward back in the 1800s.
Yeah,
and I just thought it was super cool.
I mean, I think one of you mentioned this earlier, the allegories of today's politics. I'm like, it's truly the difference between like the whole idea of MAGA and where the Progressive Democrat Party is today in the US, where like what one party wants to be would say old school Ferengi, where women have no rights and blah, blah, blah. And businessmen and take precedence over people versus, a more equal just society where everyone participates and everyone has equal rights. And because of that, we have a far more robust economy and world. So sorry to get political, but it is.
But it is, right? And Trek has always been innately political. And people who say that it's not, I'm sorry, you're wrong. You're just wrong. There's no other opinion. There can be breaks, there can be filler, fun episodes, but the thread that runs through Trek is a progressive one. But I also like that this shows that by allowing equity in a society, it doesn't mean the end of all traditions, right? It doesn't mean that what we know is going to is just going to crumble. Maybe sometimes it needs to. I'm not necessarily saying how we run our economy is good, because it's obviously very polarizing in terms of distribution of wealth. But, it's really cool to see that they kept certain things. They still have this drive and this desire for Latinum and to gain profit, but now they are allowing gender and sex equality. And I absolutely loved it. So that is one reason why I love the Ferengi. Do I love the Ferengi from season 1 of TNG? No. Do I love the Ferengi at the end of DS9? Yes. But I love the arc. I love them coming out of their chrysalis. I love seeing people's ability, like Iris said at the very beginning, they rise above their limits. And I think that is a lesson that we can all take, that we all have the potential to rise above our limits and become better. So really, the Ferengi could easily have a second part in this Evolution of a Species series. So if we ever get to that point, dibs on hosting that one as well. I've got so much more to talk about. But I just really wanted to say that I do believe that when you look at them through a different perspective, you can see the quality of this race. So,
Yeah.
of course, previously covered in this episode are the Andorians and the Q Continuum. So who did it better? Mark?
I think the Andorians specifically are one of those species that, I mean, it's gonna be tough to outdo because they do go back to the very, very beginning, right? Where Q is sort of like a modern entity and not seen in all iterations of Trek, but a modern entity introduced like in the 90s. So I got to go back to the Andorians. But I will say, if we end up doing an episode maybe on the Gorn in the future, hint, hint, might be a good idea. That might give it, give the Andorians a run for their money, because there's another species that had concepts built into the DNA of the original Star Trek program, and then it got expanded upon much later, and now we're seeing that species, the Gorn, in a whole new light. So for now, the reigning champ, I think, is the Andorians.
All right. Christos, how about yourself?
I would say the Ferengi, and I'm going to say that only because we have, if you actually look at screen time, they exceed the Andorians and Q for that matter, and we got to see far more lore and world building and whatnot. I mean, we get some Andorians a lot more in Enterprise, but still not to the extent that we got the Ferengi. And if you really think about it, except for the few references that we've made to Prodigy, Lower Decks, and a little bit in Star Trek Picard, the Ferengi have had a nice 25-year rest. So I would say we're kind of ready to dive back into Ferengi lore. And I see an opening with this new comedy show that Tawny Newsom's putting together. And I want to say there's probably almost, and knowing that Tawny's a big DS9 fan, I almost predict that we will see Ferengi if this show actually happens.
I love that idea. I hope you are right. That would make me so happy.
Well, look at you. You're like glowing.
I am. And Kelvin, how about yourself?
I'm going to go Ferengi. If you recall at the top of the episode, I said I'm not the biggest fan of Ferengi, but when I look at the lens of this episode theme, the evolution is hard to deny. And when you discuss it so passionately that, like you have just done, Kristin, there's a lot of talking points. The Andorians I see as quite binary in that they were on screen, we didn't really know anything about them, and then they were so fleshed out in Enterprise that they went from 1 to 100. Whereas Ferengi, we've had like a decade of Ferengi in the Berman era, going from one thing to another, and we enjoyed every step of the way. And we've just talked about how Lower Decks and Prodigy continue to push that. So I think the evolution of the Ferengi is the best episode we've done so far in this series. And what about you, Kristin?
Obviously the Ferengi. I just writing this, I was like, I could just write a master's thesis on, Marx's theory as represented in the development of Ferengi culture over the course of DS9, right? Like it writes itself, really. So this is just something that I've always absolutely adored about the species, and of course just DS9 being my favorite iteration of Trek that it took place in. And that's probably one reason why I love DS9 so much. So altogether, though, you got to give it credit, and it's an example for us that we can always get better. We have endless potential to be more accepting, more inclusive, and just better.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, Kelvin, and Kristin. Whether you've got Xbox or Nintendo, check out Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. 2 episodes enter the arena, 1 comes out victorious. Join hosts Joe and Kevin and a guest as they debate which should win the Batleth battle. Grab your popcorn as you listen to Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Hosted by Mark and Matt. Don your apron for The Food Replicator, where Matthew eats and drinks his way through the Star Trek cocktail and 3 cookbooks. Beam aboard Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Steven. In order to not repeat it, listen to History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissy and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissy and Thad. Curl up with a good book and delve into Beta Canon with Peter, host of the online Trek Book Club on Twitter, and his new companion, Trek Book Club podcast. Test your Trek knowledge with Treksperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Whether you're a member of Starfleet Federation or Planetary Union, go check out Union Federation, covering current Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Head over to YouTube and watch The View Screen live on Sundays, your Trek-inspired talk show hosted by Kelvin and Amy, with Season 2 starting in September for a 10-week run. Spill the tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with a LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the T-Bev. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind with monthly script readings, Let's Fly, a Discovery reaction show, It's Green, a cornucopia of topics, Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
So, Mark, what do we have coming up next week?
Well, one of my favorite episodes, we are going to be watching DS9's The Wire as part of our Addiction series. Now, this episode, well, I watched today, so I think I'll probably end up rewatching, but it's a really good episode. And, you know, it does have that wonderful line in it between Bashir and Garak, where I think Bashir is saying, is anything you ever said to me true or whatever? And he said, you know, of course. He's like, what about the lies? He's like, especially the lies, or something like that. I love that part. And it just shows their dynamic and their friendship growing. And so it's a really fun exploration of that. And now that we know that, of course, the actor, you know, that plays Garak played the character as being in love with Bashir, whenever you watch their interactions, it's sort of colored with that, and I love it.
Anything Garak, all the time. And we would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, and continue the discussion there. You can also reach us at All Good Pod on Bluesky. Please follow the network on Bluesky and Instagram at BQN Podcasts. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching their master feed. So, Mark, where can people find you when you're not tricking people into giving them Latinum?
I could use some Latinum right about now.
Yeah, kidding.
Yeah, a few bars, a few slips. Here we go. Anyway, when I'm not doing that, you guys can find me on Cinema Z. It's a podcast I host on this network where I discuss films with my friend Matt Jennings. You guys can also find me on Bluesky and, of course, in that BQN Collective. And Kelvin, where can people find you when you are not banging your head to use the universal translator that's been inserted in your lobes?
When I'm not doing that, you can find me in the BQN Collective on Facebook, or you can come and chat with me directly on the socials at Kelvin's Timeline. And Christos, where can people find you when you're not using your homosexual wiles, manipulating those men with a little bit of umox?
Oh, you know I love the umox. You can find me on Instagram at GreekGeekSD or at What's the T-Bev. You can find me on the Facebook at BQN Collective. You can also find me in our Discord server. And also find me on What's the T-Bev right here on the BQN, where we have a new season of episodes getting ready to come forward soon. Yay! And Kristin, where can people find you when you're not advocating the Grand Nagus Zek to get women's rights back into the Ferengi continuum?
Oh, that really does take up a large portion of my time. But outside of that, you can find me, of course, at the BQN Collective on Facebook. You can find me at KStrats on Instagram. And of course, I'm always on Reddit, adding to the amazing discourse over there at user Garrick's Fan Club. Please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show. You can also follow the entire network's podcast with our master feed by searching BQN.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Jenediah Seastrum. Special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and for Mark White for our artwork each and every week.
If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group, where you can also enjoy It's Green, Amy's Map Moments, and other network perks with a monthly subscription of $5 or more. You can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us
as we search out
all good things.
Oh, Robin Curtis is fine. If Amy was here, she'd tell you all about it. Oh, no, it's Susie Paxton. My God, I've got my people wrong. Edit!
My Trexpert.
Oh, we're throwing out some titles here.